Welcome to week 7, day 30 of the spring 2025 Web Technologies course. I'm Jim Kaufman with Rankin Technical College. So first, just wanted to congratulate everyone on finishing the HTML, CSS, Bootstrap portion of the course. We'll still be obviously using it going forward here, but for the most part, we're going to really be concentrating more on the JavaScript side. So today we're going to just go ahead and do a quick introduction to JavaScript, and then we're going to go ahead and go over JavaScript Chapter 2, which is getting started fast with JavaScript. We'll go ahead and do we'll just go ahead and kind of code along on the Chapter 2 homework assignment, and then we'll go ahead and preview the other Chapter 2 assignments as well, if we have time. If not, we'll push that off tomorrow because there's quite a bit to go over in the JavaScript Chapter 2. So let's go ahead and get started with the introduction to JavaScript. So far in this course, we've worked with HTML, CSS, right? And so as we remember that, HTML provides the structure and content of the web page, right? It's kind of the skeleton and the basic building blocks of your page. Whereas CSS is the presentation and the styling that makes your page more visually appealing, right? More aesthetically pleasing, right? And then JavaScript is kind of the next part, the three main parts of as far as from a front-end web technology standpoint is, the HTML, the CSS, and JavaScript. Obviously, there's frameworks like we use Bootstrap, so there's also frameworks that are available, and also there's JavaScript frameworks as well. But the core technologies, is on the front end is basically HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. JavaScript adds interactivity and dynamic behavior to your web pages. It allows you to respond to user actions like clicks, mouse overs, form submissions. You can actually manipulate the HTML. You can actually hide something. You can change the value of something, and also you can dynamically change the CSS for an element as well, right? You can fetch data from servers, create animations, and much more, okay? And you can look at it as it's kind of the muscles and the nervous system that brings your page to life. So JavaScript is a versatile and powerful scripting or programming language that adds interactivity and dynamic behavior to web pages. It's an essential technology for front-end web development. And like we were saying, it works alongside with HTML, CSS to create rich user experiences. So while primarily known for its role in web browsers, JavaScript can also be used in the server side. So there is a framework called Node.js. And, we'll touch upon it a little bit within this course, but once you get to the database-driven 1 course, you'll learn quite a bit about Node.js when you're in that course. But JavaScript is also used on the server side for Node.js, some mobile app development, even game development, right? There's different development frameworks for JavaScript that you can do many different things. So we're just going to go kind of into a little bit of the history of the JavaScript, some of its core components, and kind of the significance in modern technology landscape, okay? So JavaScript was created by Brendan Eich at Netscape Communications Corporation in 1995. Now, for you that don't know it, Netscape, there used to be Netscape Navigator. And probably most of you don't realize this because you're a lot younger than I am. But back in the early days of the internet, the late 90s, Netscape Navigator was the number one browser, right? Chrome wasn't even invented back then. So Netscape, and there really wasn't many browsers around. Okay, they were very rudimentary as well, right? And any browser that did exist were kind of rudimentary. But Netscape Navigator was the first one. It was and JavaScript was officially named Mocha, and then later renamed LiveScript, and then finally JavaScript. Probably the biggest reason I believe it was named JavaScript was Java, which is a different programming language, was very popular in the in the 90s, in the late 90s, very popular. And I think they were just kind of piggybacking on the success of the Java programming language. So that's what they used and called it JavaScript, just kind of from a marketing standpoint. But it's a completely different programming language. Okay, so JavaScript's initial purpose was to add interactivity to web pages. Okay, and the rapid adoption of the Netscape Navigator led to widespread use of JavaScript, quickly establishing it as a dominant scripting language for the web. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at a couple things here. So just kind of wanted to look at a little bit of browser stuff here real quick. So looking back at the peak, so like Netscape Navigator, back in 1995, 90% of the market, okay? After Netscape Navigator, Internet Explorer came around, and what happens back then was Internet Explorer is Microsoft product, so actually now it became Microsoft Edge. They repackage it, kind of remarket it, so to speak, as Microsoft Edge. But Internet Explorer was packaged with Windows. And most corporations, most companies bought Windows-based computers that already had Windows loaded on them, right? Installed. And so it was installed by default on all Windows-based computers, right? It was kind of integrated with the operating system. So that led to a huge peak in market share of Internet Explorer, and it actually got all the way up to 95% in 2004. Okay. Let's see what else I want to look at on this. So here is where we're at. As you can see, this top one here is IE and Edge, because Internet Explorer, IE is short for Internet Explorer. And like I said, they repackaged as Edge, but back here in 2007, this doesn't go back earlier than that. In 2007, like we originally seen that Internet Explorer was up to 95%. It's continually went down. And so back here in 2007, it was at about 68%. And it's continued to slide down, right? Then back here, Chrome got started probably around 2000 and that. It took a while for adoption. Things always take a while for adoption. But once we got about 2009, it took off, right? And then so at its height, I don't know if this is accurate here, but it has about 76% at its height. And it's kind of came back a little from there, but it's still 67%. So obviously Chrome is used, is the main browser that's used, right? Then you have other ones here as well. Firefox has been around for years. It's never had a real big following, but you could see here in like the late, before 2010, it's kind of peaking around 2010 here. I guess it peaked really there, about 33%, and it's steadily declined. Really, a lot of this decline is kind of really once Chrome took off, all the others pretty much declined. except for like Safari. So Safari is basically, Apple, right? Macintosh, iPhones, etc. So they've kind of, they started out here low, and they're actually, here's probably, let's see if that's the height of that one. Safari about 21, 21. So, looks like they're about 13 right now. So, but they've maintained within range here. That's just basically because there's iPhone, Macs and iPhones that by default that's what you'd be using as Safari. Obviously, you can download other browsers as apps to different phones, right? Different devices, and so probably a lot of people run Chrome on them as well, right? So okay, let's see here. I think there was something else I kind of wanted to show you here. I guess I really talked about the IE explosion. All right. So, and then in 1996, Netscape submitted a JavaScript ECMI International to standards organization. And so now they have standardized specifications for JavaScript. And let's go ahead and just take a quick look at that. So it's just kind of interesting from a historic standpoint. So ECMA, because you'll probably hear about them some more. They're ECMA International. It's a nonprofit standards organization for information and communication systems, and the name European Computer Manufacturers Association. Okay, it's changed its name to reflect the organization's global reach and activities. But back here in '97 was the first edition based JavaScript and was implemented for Netscape Navigator. And then, so in 98, some editorial changes to keep the specification fully aligned. Okay, we don't have to go into all of that. But then here things kind of got a little interesting. So like in 1999, they had JavaScript 1.2. Okay. And so, like I said, everything was really about Netscape Navigator by then, and everything was within there. Other browsers adopted JavaScript along the way, right? But the first was Netscape Navigator, right? Which Netscape organization created it. But here in 1999, they had JavaScript 1.2. Then, as you kind of notice, which is kind of interesting, the next draft, the next version, the fourth edition was abandoned to political differences. There was a bunch of infighting, I guess, about standards and stuff. So obviously, it's kind of interesting that from December 1999, it took from December 1999 all the way until 2009, almost 10 years, for them to kind of get everything together, so to speak, right? But once December 2009 came, okay, you had a next version. As you can see, we go through here and we see that you have multiple versions. Then 2011, 15, 16, all the way to the current day. Okay, so and actually a lot of browsers, it takes browsers time to catch up once a standard comes out. It's not like it's initially done. Obviously, there's a process when there's new JavaScript features available, the specifications change. It could just be security updates and so forth as well, right? But it takes a little time for the browsers to implement it. They have to implement it. They have to test everything. There's a process that takes a while, right? So I think right now this is where Chrome is. I think they have this implemented at this point. Obviously, you can look at the different Chrome versions. They have actually a version history of all the different Chrome versions. If you want to dig in there, you can see actually what version they're doing. I think it is this version here that's the current one. Okay. So next, JavaScript engines. So when you have JavaScript, when you use JavaScript, it's basically the way that JavaScript gets executed is by using the JavaScript engine, and it's it's embedded within the browser. Okay, and different browsers have some different kinds of JavaScript engines, right? Chrome has what's called the V8 engine, and it's a high performance JavaScript engine. And we'll talk about this a little bit more here. It compiles JavaScript code into machine code for faster execution. It's known for its speed and efficiency, slightly contributing to the performance of modern web applications. So the big thing about V8, which is the JavaScript engine, it's open source. So that means anybody can go and grab that JavaScript engine and build something on top of that, build a framework or whatever. They can build their own browser and use that JavaScript engine because it's open source, it's free, right? And that's exactly what Node.js did. They actually use that, and Node.js is a popular runtime environment, which I said, you will learn much more about Node.js here in the future courses in year 2. But that JavaScript engine is the one that's Node's based on, and also I'm almost sure. So Microsoft Edge also uses V8. Instead of creating their own, they ended up using that. I guess they liked it, and so they use V8 as well. They used to use a different JavaScript engine, but I think Safari uses a different one. I'll have to look into that again. I haven't looked at that for a while. But there's different JavaScript engines, but V8, Chrome one is very popular. And we'll talk about that a little bit more here in a bit. So basically, the JavaScript engine, what that's going to do is going to take your code. And here it talks about compiling JavaScript code, but actually JavaScript is considered an interpreted language. It kind of, the JavaScript engine is kind of an interpreter, but and originally, historically, it was just kind of an interpreter. It would take the JavaScript, okay, and it's going to interpret that language, and it's going to display it, right? But as time's gone in and to make things more efficient, actually, the JavaScript engine will find some things. If you're reusing stuff over and over again, it actually takes that piece of code and compiles it. And when it compiles it, it actually makes it faster. Okay, so there's a little bit. It's just because of how the JavaScript engines have kind of evolved. They do a little bit more on the compiling side as well as just interpreting it. Okay. I do want to go into interpreted versus compiled code. So you might hear interpreted and compiled in the context of programming. In interpreted languages, the code is run from top to bottom, and the result of the running code is immediately returned. You don't have to transform the code into different form before the browser runs it. The code is received in the programmer-friendly text form and processed directly from that. Okay, now that's interpreted. Now there's also compiled languages. Compiled languages, on the other hand, are transformed. They're compiled into one form before they are run on the computer. For example, C++, C, C++, C#, Java, all of these are compiled into machine code and then run by the computer. The program is executed from a binary format, ones and zeros, which was generated from the original program source code. Okay, so it actually creates a different format and then it executes it from that format. It's a compiled. So in this course, as far as the students in this course, we have quite a few that were already in the C#. And as you know, we really didn't compile the code as well. What happened is the Visual Studio Community version that we used, right, which is different than the Visual Studio Code, actually would compile that. When you hit build, it actually compiles the code. And when you ran it, it would actually run a build and compile it, then run it. But we didn't have to manually compile the code, right? But, there are times that is needed for all different programming languages. And that's especially when you're going to release something, right? When you release it, you don't want, you're going to actually have it as a compiled version, right? As a production version, it'll be compiled, right? But just to kind of show the differences where JavaScript is different, it's pretty much an interpreted language as opposed to other languages which can be compiled languages, okay? So what type of language is JavaScript? JavaScript is a dynamically typed. As we said, it's interpreted. It is prototype-based scripting language. All right. So as far as dynamically typed, and so what that means is in JavaScript, the type of a variable is determined at runtime, not during compilation, right? So for you who already took the C# course, you know that if you went ahead and defined a variable and there was something wrong with that, right? How you define that, you would find that out before you even ran the application, right? It would not run if it would not compile, right? If you did something wrong, it would not even run, right? In JavaScript, okay, this means that you don't need to explicitly declare the data type of a variable, okay? So for like C#, we'd create a variable, we'd declare a variable being an integer or a double or a float, right, or a string. But in JavaScript, you don't have to do that. You just, it's the JavaScript engine will figure out what you kind of mean by it. It dynamically does that, okay? And so it's dynamically typed as opposed to statically typed. The C#, Java, C++, them are all statically typed languages. JavaScript is dynamically typed, okay? The same variable can hold different data types during the execution of a program. So that means that you can define a variable and give it the value of hello world, and then you can come back and take that same variable and assign it the number of 5, right? So you first had it as a string, and then you can actually come back and just change that to a numeric value, and that's fine. JavaScript engine's fine with that, right? So this flexibility can be convenient, but also requires careful coding to avoid unexpected type-related errors. As we already said, that JavaScript is interpreted. So JavaScript code is executed line by line by the JavaScript engine without being compiled into separate executable files beforehand. The engine directly interprets and runs the code. Okay? Like I said, that's a little more... The JavaScript engines have kind of really advanced, they become much more advanced. And so, like I said, there's some certain, you don't have to worry about it as a developer, but it's just kind of good to know that behind the scenes, that JavaScript engine, if there's some blocks of code that are continually being used, it will actually compile that to make them faster, okay? But still, for the most part, you still just kind of look at it, it's interpreted, the JavaScript engine is going to interpret your code and just run it, right? Another thing that's different about JavaScript and those other languages that we were kind of mentioning there is that JavaScript is prototype based. And, this can be kind of maybe a little complicated. You don't have to worry about it, but just kind of especially for the ones who've already taken C#, you remember we had classes, right? We had classes which were basically a blueprint to create objects. So languages like C#, C++, Java, etc., them are class-based languages, right? They use that blueprint to generate objects, whereas JavaScript is a prototype-based, and what that means, it actually kind of like copies objects. It doesn't use the class type mechanism to create objects. It's kind of a copy or a clone of objects, and then you can change that object to do whatever you want. Okay, just a different kind of a different way of doing things, so to speak. So it also, yeah, we'll talk about the DOM later. It interacts with the DOM, which is the document object model. And that's basically your HTML page, is your document object model. Okay. So let's look at, all right, I don't think we're going to look at this right now. Yeah, so let's go look at a little bit of code. Well, just, and so here, just kind of want to, here's a basic index.html file, okay? It's bringing in a script, right? And so a script has a source tag, okay? And then a script, so there's different ways to use JavaScript. You can bring in a source, so this is bringing in an external file, okay? Also, you can include JavaScript just like this in your code as well. So you have one there, one here, okay, etc. But before we get to that, kind of just want to talk a little bit about, so this file here is basically there's not much in here, right? You got a heading, got a couple headings here, you got a button, and there's really nothing here, right? But over here in the JavaScript file we're bringing in, so this is just created for demonstration purposes. When you do your assignments, you're going to do things a little differently, but this is more for demonstration type purposes. Okay. I do want to show you this, which is interesting. So we're just talking about that script tag. Maybe before we do that, I want to talk a little bit about the developer tools. So here, let's just see, we got this variable here. We're going to talk about this variable later, but we got this variable here. And so if we go over here and bring this up, we're going to open up developer tools on this, okay? And as you can see, there's really nothing there, right? But that JavaScript was called in here, okay? And let's see if we go to elements 2 to see all of the what actually is there from the JavaScript. If we go to this console, okay? If we go to this console and I grab that one variable. If I put this variable in here, there's the value. So what happens is when any JavaScript you have, either embedded in your file, or if you call in embed it in your HTML, I should say. If it's embedded in your HTML, just using that beginning and end script tags. Or if you call in a file, like I called in that file at the head section, all of that will be put into the memory. The browser will hold on to all of that. So the fact that you brought up that, that we're using live server here, so now it is actually loaded within the browser. So all of those fields are actually there, okay? I will point out there is a couple different objects here. There's called the window object, right? And this window object is basically the whole page. It's more the whole page. It's the whole browser tab, okay? It has more than just the HTML. The window has a bunch of different methods. It has some different properties, all right? And it's the whole tab and everything. It's more than your HTML document, okay? And actually, I just put in window here. I can click on this, and it'll actually show me a whole bunch of different methods. And it has besides different method, it has different properties. Some of the stuff we will use and look at, but there's a lot of here that's not, we probably won't touch upon, right? because it's a significant. It's very significant. There's a lot of stuff here. You know, we could spend a lot of time, but there's a lot of these window methods and properties that we will use, right, in our page. We'll use some of the Windows ones, right? And then we'll use other methods that we define ourselves, right? But Windows has their methods, okay? But also a window holds on to the document, right? The window will hold on to this document, and this is the document. Another way to kind of look at this, though. Okay, let's make this smaller here. Let's just type in document here. So here, I click on this. Here's the document. Okay. So that's that's the document. That's our index.html, and this is called the document object model. Okay, this is the document object model. So the important things I just wanted to kind of stress right now on here, you know, this console is a very helpful tool for debugging purposes. Obviously, users who would come see your web page, they're not going to know about this. This is for developers to use, right? This is for developers to use. There could be errors on a web page just by looking at the web page yourself, and we'll look at that here in a little bit. But you know, we'll create some things that'll create some errors. But you'll be able to see those in the console, but you're not going to see them on the page. You're not going to know there's an error. Okay. The browsers kind of hide that stuff because otherwise, if anytime there's any kind of error, you know, you'd be going to websites all the time. Sometimes things do happen like that, though. But, you know, for the most part, you know, the browser is just going to try to execute what it can execute. And if it can't execute it, it's just going to skip it. You know, it's a little different, right? It's a little different than when we use other programming languages. And like I said, all the C# students that are in this course, you know, we know when, you know, we make a bunch of mistakes, it just ain't going to work at all, right? It's not going to work at all. So, but the other important thing is, you know, this is going to be a great tool. They don't, in this, the book for the JavaScript book really doesn't talk about the console for a while and using like console.log method. But I think it's a very important tool for debugging and helping you understand things. So I'm kind of introducing it very early on so you can kind of use it to evaluate, to inspect your different JavaScript, okay? But like I said, the important thing is to really realize that the other important thing to realize is that when you have a HTML document that has either embedded JavaScript or is linked to a JavaScript file, all of that is brought into memory within the browser, okay? And I'll show you something real quick here just for fun. So what did we have here? This number, what are the number of items here? So if I have this number of items here, it kind of automatically puts, you can see that little 10 down there, but let's say I want to reassign this to something else, okay? We're gonna look into all this here in the future, right? So now, number of items is 20. I'm just gonna run this again, just to show you, okay, it's still 20, right? But if I refresh this page, right, what it's gonna do, it's going to wipe it. So what it's doing is, right here now, it's actually adding to the memory. It added 20 to the number of items, right? It's resident in memory, right? But if I hit refresh here, what's going to happen? It's going to refresh the whole page. It's going to call in all of everything that was defined, but this thing I just changed, it's not going to be there anymore, right? So if I look at number of items here, what did I got here? All right, what did I do? Let's take a look here real quick. Override is not defined. Why not? Well, something funky happened there on my page. I don't know why. All right, so we're going to go to console here. Let's see what's here. Here's our number of items. So it's back to 10, right? So, sorry, that didn't quite work well for me there. I don't know what was going on with that. All right. What else? So next, let's change this to over here. Make this smaller. Okay, next thing I want to go over is, real quick. So, okay, we're calling in a JavaScript file here. Then we've got script tag here, and we have a script tag there. So I'm going to go ahead and uncomment this out. And I'm doing this quick way to uncomment something. Okay, and actually a comment real quick for a single line. It's going to be 2 forward slashes. So in HTML, that's, you know, it was a different where we use the bracket and the exclamation point, right? But for JavaScript and for the C# students that were in C# already, it's the same, right? You're going to do 2 forward slashes for one line, or for multi-line, you do it like this, right? You do. No, I'm sorry. That's our HTML. So for multi-line, you do this, right? For multi-line, you do that. For one line, you do just the 2 forward slashes. But I'm going to go ahead and select this line. I'm going to hit the Control forward slash and get rid of that alert. Get rid of that comment. So I'm just uncommenting this code back out. I'm going to save that. So we got it in there. And I'm going to come here. And I'm also going to do this one as well. All right. So I have an alert. So this alert is kind of a little pop-up here, right? So for here, real quick, I'm going to, because I want to refresh this. Every time you save something, even in the JavaScript file, it's going to refresh here in the browser, right? So something to keep in mind. When you're using live server, right? If you end up opening up the file by going directly to the file structure only, it's going to not refresh. To refresh it, you're going to have to click the reload button. But with live server, anytime you change your index.html and save it, or do your JavaScript file, it's going to reload. Okay, so here's our JavaScript file. I have this alert in here. I have 2 alerts here. One up here is also in the head section, and then down here in the body section. So I'm going to hit reload this page, and it's going to say this is a test of JavaScript loading from the file. Now it's loading from the head section. All right. Now it's loading from the body section. Okay. So one more thing I wanted to kind of mention. There's a newer type. A newer type thing that's available here that you can actually do this. And we'll talk about later why you may want to be doing this. It's called defer. So now if I save this, as you notice, the first one, this is a test of the JavaScript. The head section is the first one. The body section is the second one. And then it loaded it from the file. So this one here, it actually happens after this one. It defers this until the whole document, until this whole document is loaded. Once this whole document is loaded, then it goes ahead and loads this file. And we'll talk about that later. Why it does that? Why you care about that and may want to do that? Okay. So let's just get rid of all this for now. All right. It's still saving it from before. I think something's going on here with my thing. Alert, alert, they're all gone. If I hit this again, yeah, it's holding on to something for some reason. I don't know why it's doing that. Okay, now it's happy. I don't know. All right. Okay. Okay, so I'm not going to go through all of these slides for chapter 2, but there are quite a few. We are going to go through quite a few of them, but we're not going to go through all of them. So I'll be skipping around here, and I'll be going back between this and the Visual Studio Code as well. So the basic syntax rules for JavaScript. JavaScript is case sensitive. So that means if you create a variable, all right, we'll look at variables here. So when you create a variable, whatever name you give that variable, if you have the wrong case, when you try to access that variable, it's not going to find it, right? So JavaScript's case sensitive. Each JavaScript statement ends with a semicolon. Now, you can actually get away with this, but it's really not best practices to do that. It's really best practices to always end each statement with a semicolon. Makes it more readable and more understandable. Sometimes, if you don't do that, and then you could make mistakes in that. It's just kind of for best practices to add that semicolon. JavaScript ignores extra white spaces within statements. So we'll take a look at that here in a minute. And then when JavaScript is in strict mode, it disallows certain JavaScript features and coding practices that are considered unsafe. And we'll look at strict mode as well. All right, let me see. Let's go through this. Rules for creating identifiers. All right. So let's go ahead, though, and look at that. It's case sensitive. Each JavaScript statement ends in a semicolon towards white space. And we'll look at strict mode here as well. Okay. So basically what this is saying is like, you could do this, right? It's happy. You can do that. It's not a big deal. Okay. So you put white space in there. Okay. Also, you can do a \n, and let's save that. I think we need to do a console log. So we'll do a console.log here, and we'll just put in and as you can see over here on the right hand side, we got MISS, new line character, OURI. So that's a new line character. Obviously probably best to, so you can see it better. Also, you can use tabs. I'm going to save this. I hope that that's working right, and I'm not having to reload this each time. Oh, yeah. So there you go. You had 3 tabs in a row there. So that put that in there. So new line character, tabs. That's how you do new line characters or tabs. Also, like I said, you can put in, obviously you do something like this, right? It is going to put in those spaces, right? It's still going to put in those spaces. When we're talking about but you can ignores this. The JavaScript engine will ignore this kind of stuff, right? Sometimes you got to be careful on what you're doing. See, it's still showing that, right? What else why don't you show you? Yeah, there's this idea strict mode. I think I'm going to wait on that for right now. All right. It's case sensitive, ends in a semicolon, white space. All right. So identifiers. So we'll go ahead and take a look at some identifiers. Identifiers can only contain letters, numbers, and underscore, and the $sign. Identifiers can't start with a number. Identifiers are case sensitive. Identifiers can be any length. Identifiers can't be the same as reserved words. Avoid using global properties and methods as identifiers as well. So let's go look at identifiers. So basically an identifier is this name, right? It can't start with a number. That's right. Can't start with a number. It can start with a $sign. $sign's fine. Cannot start with a number. It can't use a that's a reserved word. Catch is not allowed as a variable declaration. What else here? Can't start. It's case identifiers are case sensitive. Identifiers can be any length. I think we covered all of that already. Just for the fact, yeah, you can't put in. You can't change this to a lowercase b here. You got an error over here. It's not defined, right? It is case sensitive. So here's valid identifiers, just showing you different. You can do underscores. Underscores are fine. Dollar, just showing you this is a called camel case, right? Where you've got the start with a lowercase and then your next word you make that uppercase. This is calculate click, which is a different kind. And then here starts with a $. So yeah, the snake casing, that's what I meant to say. So camel case is where it's basically, usually when you got two different words, right? Tax rate, you start with a lowercase t. The second word, is uppercase R. Snake case is where you just use underscores like that, okay? So use meaningful names for identifiers. That way your identifiers aren't likely to be reserved words or global properties. Yeah, it's always best to, I know there's going to be some examples we're going to look at where we're just using like X or Y or A or B. But for the most, you really don't want to do that in your code. You really should use an identifier that's relevant to what you're trying to do, right? So keep that in mind. Here's a being consistent. Either use camel case or snake casing to identify words within the variables in your scripts. So it's pretty much saying, if in your script, if you decide what one you're going to use. If you use snake casing, use all lowercase for letters. Okay. And one thing I wanted to look at on here, I wanted to kind of explain something which kind of goes against that a little bit. So before there was, see these lets and const, we'll look at what these mean. But before these existed, right, everything was used a var, V-A-R, like that. Okay, and that can still be used. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. But what happened was whenever what a lot of people did, a lot of developers do, is at like kind of at the beginning of their file, they'd have a thing of all the different constants in their file, right? And they used to put it in uppercase. They used to use snake casing and put it in all uppercase like this. Okay, so that way it kind of identified that as a constant, right? Now, in later versions of JavaScript, you got the const, so it's not so important. But, I still like, and maybe it's more, just because I'm used to looking at it a certain way, I still kind of like the idea of, even if we have this as a const, to have this on all uppercase, so it's obvious that, throughout your code, that if you can see something that's all uppercase like this, you go, oh, that's a constant. I know that's a constant, right? So we'll look at that a little bit more here in the future, but just kind of want to point that out. So here's a bunch of different reserved words. So obviously your identifiers is the identifiers that you use are developer created. You decide what your identifier name is, right? What you're going to call a variable or object or whatever. And so but you cannot use any of the reserved words. So that example I just had earlier, I used a catch, right? Tried to use catch, and I said, no, can't use that. It's a reserved word. So here's all the different reserved words, okay? And for the most part, not sure why you would use any of these, right? But just to let you know that these cannot be used. So JavaScript comments, we kind of looked at that already. So for multi-line comments, you used a / and an asterisk. And then you end that with a asterisk /. We'll take a look at /. later again. And then for just a single line, you use the double /. So reasons, let's see this, the basic syntax for JavaScript comments. Block comments begin with, okay, we said that, / asterisk and ends with asterisk /. Single comments are going to be 2 /. Guidelines for using comments. Use comments to describe portions of code that are hard to understand. Use comments to disable portions of your code that you don't want you don't want to test. Sometimes like I'm going to be doing that a lot here, and I kind of was already doing. Just for testing purposes, demonstration purposes. I'm going to comment out certain lines and uncomment out certain lines, right? But when you're just creating code, you really shouldn't have a whole bunch of lines commented out in your code, right? If you do, it really doesn't have a purpose. It does have a purpose maybe for some testing purposes. You might want to have some things at some times, but most of your code shouldn't be commented out, right? And you don't want to use comments unnecessarily. This is a variable, this is that. Sometimes you might want to do like we were just looking at a group of constants that you might have a thing at the top of your file, say these are the constants I'm going to be using in the file. I don't think that's a bad thing. But you don't really want to comment something that kind of you can look at it and tell what it is. This is this field, this is that field. You don't necessarily want to comment everything, right? You want to do what kind of makes sense. So terms related to JavaScript syntax, a statement. So basically when you define a variable, which we're going to be looking at some more variables here, that's a statement, right? We know about white space. So white space is white space in between the, after the variable name or after the equal sign, you can put a bunch of white space. The JavaScript engine don't care about that; it ignores that, right? Strict mode, we're gonna take a look at that here in a little bit and some more. Identifier, that's the name that you're gonna give to the variable or user-defined objects. There's objects, there's other things as well, but basically your variable name is going to be your identifier that you create yourself. We looked at camel casing, which is basically, for the most part, it's going to be all lowercase with underscores. Camel casing, I'm sorry. That's the snake casing. Camel casing is where you got the first letter lowercase, and then subsequent letters are going to be uppercase for the other words. We looked at a comment, 2 different ways to do a comment, and then basically just saying that you can comment out code. So now we're going to go ahead and look at JavaScript's primitive data types. So what's available for JavaScript is a number, string, Boolean, symbol, null, undefined, and big int. Big int is more of a recent addition to the specification, 2020, but still that's recent. Like I said, it kind of takes time for adoption of certain things. So that's been available since 2020, the big int. Now, do want to point out, so like we were used to, especially for the C# students, you know, you had if something was a number, if it was an integer or a double, you had to say it was an integer or a double, right? You had to say it was a string or a Boolean, right? It's different with JavaScript, and we'll take a look at that. So basically, here we're doing number of items equals 10, okay? Number of items equals 10, so this is a number, right? We didn't say, hey, this is a number. This is our user-defined identifier that we created and call this whatever, right? We just put in the number 10. So the JavaScript engine understands that you mean this to be a number, right? You don't have to statically state that, hey, this is a number, this is an int, this is a double, this is a float, whatever, right? And the same thing with a string, right? Let's get rid of this. So here you got a Missouri here, right? This is a string. You didn't state that you want this as a string. You just go ahead and use this, right? So down here's the primitive data types. A number is like 5. Here's 5 number data type, and here's a string data type. Here's a Boolean. It's either going to be true or false, right? Make sure that it's lowercase, right? I know that that's not accurate. I want to see what I want to test something on that later. And I'll probably just let you know some other time. Did that complain over there? Yeah, I did. I'm sorry. True is not defined, right? Yeah. It's got to be lowercase. So true or false. Symbols, we'll talk about symbols later. Symbols it's kind of related to objects. And so we're not going to be dealing that right away here. So we'll talk about that more in the future. Okay. It's kind of a special type primitive. And then you have null. You can just state that something's null, right? And that's a data type. And then there's also, by you not putting anything, you're not assigning anything to a variable that you created, by default, it's going to be undefined, okay? And all this stuff we can actually just put right in here. I'm over here on the right-hand side. Undefined, it's going to show it's undefined, right? If I put number, I'll put that one over here, right? It's going to show it's a number 5. Let's see. All right. So we have let and const. So const is a constant, right? And then let is another way to another way for you to describe your data. Well, let me show you kind of the difference here on a couple things. So if you got a const named pi here, right? So if I go ahead and try to do this, let's say I try to do pi equals, okay, so I'm going to save this now. And over here on the right, you see assignment to a constant variable. You cannot change. Whenever you assign a const, whenever you use const, you cannot change the value of that. It's a constant and cannot be changed. Okay. Now a let up here, what you can do here is you can do, well, we already kind of did this over there in the developer tools, but that's fine, right? You can do that. Now it's 20, right? But you cannot do this again. You define that, you cannot do this, right? It's going to tell you right here in the editor, you cannot do this. Cannot redeclare a block scope variable, number of items, okay? All right, that's that. So here's your different primitive data types. Like I said, you don't have to. Symbol's one where obviously you have to use that special. It's a special kind of primitive, and you have to use that symbol name in there, up just like that with the uppercase. We'll look into that later. Just showing, here's some different values that could be assigned. Basically an integer value, a negative integer, a decimal value, a negative, or a floating point notation, right? You can actually use the scientific, floating point notation as well. A number value can be an integer or a decimal value. In JavaScript, decimal values are stored as floating point numbers. That's just kind of background information. If a result is stored in a number data type that is larger or smaller than the data type can store, it will be stored as value infinity or in, yeah. We'll take a look. We'll look at an example of that later. I don't know, but I'll show you how that kind of works as well when we get into this thing a little farther into this this subject in this course. So here's some examples of strings. And so you can use, the important thing is probably to be consistent. So you can use double quote, double quotes or single quotes. But the important thing is actually kind of be consistent on what you do use. The string value is surrounded by double quotes or single quotes. The string must start and end with the same type of quotation mark. And that's another thing about quotes. And always, that's a little gotcha that a lot of developers, especially newer developers, will struggle with sometimes. You got a bunch of quotes and stuff. You got to make sure you end those quotes, right? So, we'll later we're going to see where we're going to end up using a lot of quotes maybe within a statement, and so that you got to make sure you always close them out. And this also can be an empty string. Is a string that contains no characters. So as opposed to a string being null, right, or undefined, right? Basically, in JavaScript, if you don't assign a value, right? If you don't assign a value, it's going to be undefined. If you put an empty string, it will not, right? And we already looked at Booleans, either true or false. And like I said, can't be uppercase T for true or uppercase F for false. It's got to be lowercase. A Boolean value can be true or false. Boolean values are often used in conditional statements. Okay. How to declare and initialize a variable. So here's just examples of integers, of decimals, a string, an empty string. Here's a is valid. And a lot of times when people, when developers do define something as a Boolean, a lot of times they use like is. is valid, is, you know, is before something, right? Some other word, depending on what you're doing. Also, a variable can be assigned to a different variable, right? So here we got subtotal equals that. You can actually create a new variable and assign it to a variable that already exists, right? Obviously, it already has to exist. Here's one way to declare two variables on the same line. Like here, you got let x equals 0, comma, y equals 0, and this will use let for each one of these, right? How to reassign the value of variable. But, we kind of reassigned that just earlier just by setting it to another thing. Here it's just showing you basically kind of a count type thing where you got a count equals 1, and then you have that count equals the existing count plus 1. So this is going to be 2 now, right? How to declare and initialize a constant. Same as a variable, but with the const keyword. We kind of already looked at this. You can't do this. Once you assign a const, you can't do it again. Yeah, well, yeah, actually, yeah, you can't increment it. In this case, you can't change anything about that const. Once you do, once you identify, once you assign it, that's it. So how JavaScript processes variables and constant declarations. JavaScript places all variable and constant declarations in memory first. This is called hoisting. When a variable that's declared with the var keyword is hoisted. So all in all, you really don't want to use we're going to look at the var keyword. And also, there probably are some assignments where there might be vars used, but for the most case, you really want to try to stay away from using var in general. And we'll take a look at that here in a bit. So when a variable is declared with the var keyword, it's hoisted. We'll talk about that as well. JavaScript initializes it with a value of undefined. Because of this, you can access the variable before you declare it, but its value will be undefined. When a variable that's declared with the let keyword is hoisted, okay? And this idea of hoisting, what this whole idea of hoisting really means is it moves, when you define it, actually kind of like it moves it to the top of the scope. So if you, in our case, we're just having a file with all of these things. So what it does is, you might have things that are, and when we say hoisting, it's not really hoisting it in the file. It's hoisting it in memory to the top, right? It's hoisting it in memory, keeping that stuff up top. Might be a little bit of a hard concept to grasp for a while, but as time goes on, you kind of understand it better. When a variable that's declared, okay, so let's say because of this, yeah, so let's review this. So when a variable that's declared with the keyword is hoisted, JavaScript initializes it with a value of undefined. Because of this, you can access the variable before you declare it, but its value will be undefined. When a variable that's declared with the let keyword, it's hoisted, it's still hoisted. JavaScript does not initialize it. And we'll take a look at that. That's also true of a constant. Because of this, you can't access the variable or constant before you declare it. So here it's showing you an example of this. So here is a variable, val1, and you're actually accessing it before it's declared. And this will actually not fail. This will display undefined. Okay. And in this case, it's going to display the value of it. Okay. A variable declared with the let keyword. If you try to access a variable before it is defined, you're going to get nothing. You get a reference error, right? And then obviously if you use it after it's declared, it's fine. Let's go ahead and take a look at that real quick. So in here, what do I want to do? So here's an example where I'm trying to access this variable. And let's change this to a var to start out. And as you can see, the value is undefined, okay? And that's for a var. So the whole idea of hoisting, it actually hoists that thing. It actually moves that to the top. So you define this, it moved it to the top, and I don't think of it as it moved it within the file. It moved it within memory to the top, okay? And it does, and hoisting is done as far as for let and const as well, okay? But the difference is for let and const, it will not assign it undefined at the beginning, okay? So here, like we said, you're trying to you access a variable before you define it, and it's going to be undefined. You go ahead and change this to a let and save this, you're going to get a reference error because you cannot do that like that. Now, like I said, it is still just from a a knowledge standpoint here, just for your own purposes to understand, is that all this stuff is still hoisted, right? It's moved to the top of memory whenever you declare these variables. It's moved to the top of memory so it's kind of available before this is available, but it does not include the value here, right? It's not gonna make it undefined, I should say. Okay, not for a let. For let and const, it will not. Same, but for a var, it will. So vars are bad because of when you create a var, you create it at a kind of a global standpoint, at a global scope. So it's always best to kind of define your variables within the scope you're working. Here we kind of just have one file. When we start learning about functions and stuff, the scope will be different. That scope will be in that function and that. So there's a lot of benefits in using something like let as opposed to var, because var can give you some. If you're not careful, you can get some undesired results with var. Okay. Let's go ahead and take. We've been going a little over an hour here. Let's go ahead and take a 10-minute break, and then we'll come back and continue forward here. So next, I want to talk about arithmetic operators. So JavaScript has obviously addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, modulus, increment, and decrement. The biggest, obviously you're all familiar with all the different ones. I do want to go through modulus a little bit. That might be one that depends on your, as far as your math knowledge and that. Sometimes students get a little confused with the modulus stuff, so kind of want to really go over that one. The important thing is the order of precedence and stuff like that, right? Especially you want to make sure when you've got multiple operators and operands that you can figure out what the values are, right? So the order of precedence, it's left to right for pretty much everything, right? Increment, operator, decrement. So increments adding one, right? Decrements subtracting one. It's used a lot for counters and things like that when you just want to, when you're maybe loop, or when we start doing loops and stuff, you're looping through something, you want to add or subtract from a counter. That's a good use for that, right? And then the order of precedence, and then multiplication, division, modulus, and then after that's addition and subtraction, right? So let's go ahead and look at examples of simple arithmetic expressions. 5 plus 7. Here you got 5 minus 12 for negative number. Multiplication, here's division, where the result is going to have decimal places, right? Here is modulus. And just to kind of go through this, probably go through this a few times. Not sure, how often, as far as students, you guys, use modulus or whatever, and it might be a while, whatever. But basically, so how modulus works. Modulus is kind of actually used a lot in programming for like, maybe, like how we did like the CSS, we did odd rows and even, and maybe like every fourth, there's some times in JavaScript where you want to do the same thing, where you might be looping through something and you want to display the first, 10 of them, right? So you can actually use modulus to do things like that. Okay, it's very helpful, beneficial. So basically here, what you're doing is, the way modulus works, 13 modulus 4 is how many times does 4 go into 13? It goes into it 3 times, right? And then what's left over? 1 is left over, right? It's whatever's left over. It's the remainder. Always remember modulus is the remainder. So I'll point that out each time, just just because I just know I've seen some developers kind of have some struggles with that for one reason or another, or especially when you got a lot of equation, you're doing some complex equation and stuff. I don't know, maybe just having it all together causes confusion. Then here, counter plus plus is basically taking the counter and do the counter equals counter plus 1. Counter decrement is counter equals a counter minus 1. So basically here it's just showing you're reassigning the value of counter, right? By either adding 1 or subtracting 1. Here, multiplication is done first. You multiply 4 times 5, then you add 3, right? 4 times 5 is 20, plus 3 is 23. Here, the addition is done first. Well, that's because it's in parentheses. Parentheses takes precedence, right? So here you got 3 plus 4 is 7. 7 times 5 is 35. Here's modulus, right? So the modulus is done first. So in this case, you got 13 modulus 4. 4 goes into 13 3 times. And what's left over is 1. 1 plus 9 is 10. Here's a scenario where you're doing the addition first. So 4 plus 9 is 13. 13 goes into 13 one time, and the remainder is 0 in that case, right? All right, let's look at a little code on that. Pretty much the same thing here. So obviously 3 times 4 is 12, right? 12 plus 2. Let's go ahead and look at the result here. It's 14, right? 12 plus 2 is 14. Here's a parentheses first. 3 plus 2 is 5. 5 times 4, right? What are we expecting there? $20. Division before subtraction. So 10 divided by 2 is 5. 5 minus 3 is 2, right? And then the next one is, so you're going to do 2 minus 3, right? 2 minus 3 is -1. All right. So, yeah, obviously 10 divided by -1 is going to be -10. Here, multiplication and division, left to right. So, I'm going to do 3 times 4 is 12. 12 divided by 2 is 6. 6 plus 2 is 4, right? Which one was that? 5? What did I do here? 4, 2. 3 times 4 is 12. 12 divided by 2 is 6. Plus 2 is 8. Sorry, yes. Here, you're going to do what's in parentheses first. So you got 3 plus 2 is 5. 5 times 4 divided by 2 is 2. So 2 times 5 is 10, right? That's that one. Result 7. So here you got modulus. Modulus before addition. 3 goes into 10 3 times. What's left over? 1. 1 plus 1 is 2. Here we've got division before modulus. So 10 divided by 2 is 5. 3 goes into 5 one time with 2 remainder. All right. That's correct. Then here's parentheses first. So you're going to go, basically 4 goes into 10 2 times. With the remainder is 2, right? So 2 times 2 is 4. And there you go. Just kind of go over that a few times, if that's helpful for anyone. This is basically a compound assignment operator, where basically what you're doing here is you're going to let x equals 10. And then what x is you want x equals x plus 5. That's what this says. X equals x plus 5. Just a shortcut, a shorthand for adding the number. Okay. Let's see what's next on here. Bear with me for a second. Some escape characters. Yeah, that can be helpful, obviously. So we'll look at that real quick. So basically here we got this greeting. Let's see, what am I doing here? Do I want to use this one? Let me just do this for now. All right. So we got a hello world here. So we want to go ahead and look at, well, we already looked at a new line character earlier. But, you can also do, like if you want the actually show a single quote, you can escape that. So now you can see there's a single, I don't know if you can see it very well, but there's a single quote there before world, right? Just put a multiple, we just put multiple in there to make sure you can see that. So that's putting in a bunch of single quotes, okay? And the reason it went to new line just because of the space available to it. So that's a way to escape different characters, because obviously, since you're using, you're using quotes, and that's another thing, kind of a gotcha. You ever have a single quote or double quote that you want to actually display on the page, you actually want to use within your JavaScript, variable, whatever, you got to make sure you escape that if you want that to to actually display, right? Also a plus sign is not just used for adding numbers together. They're also used for concatenating. So here you're concatenating two different strings, and you're setting the result of this concatenation back to greeting, right? Then also wanted to go through a template literal. And a template literal is follows the concept of interpolation. And basically what it does is allow you to be able to use variables right in your statements like this, okay? Right within your statements like this. One thing that's very important though is these are not single quotes. These are ticks, right? So on your keyboard, next to the left of your 1 on your keyboard is a tick, right? So you need to make sure that you're using a tick as opposed to a single quote, right? So that's a tick, right? And that's a single quote. Single quote's going to be up and down, right? Tick, back tick, right? It's going to be going from the top down. It's going to be slanted, right? So make sure that you use the right one. Otherwise, you put these in single quotes, it's not going to work, right? So we'll put that in a single quote. And that, let's see what you get here. Oh, well, we're doing the wrong one. Comment that one out. So it's just going to put that, right? It's just going to create a string. Whatever you put in there, you put in there. You have to use the backtick, right? You have to use the backtick for it to work. And it's basically putting in, yeah, hello world. It's putting in this greeting right in here. So whatever you put in here, right? So very, very useful tool. We'll be using this a lot, this template literal to be able to include. So then also, make sure you're ever using, if you got a value here, let's just say, I'm just, for the heck of it, I'm going to put this to a number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's put it to $12.50. How about that? $12.50. So here's 12.50. Well, sometimes people get confused thinking this dollar sign is going to put a dollar sign before that. That's not going to be the case, really, right? So basically, you actually do that, and that's going to put a dollar sign, right? So it's a little different, Obviously, if you put a space, then it's going to put a space in there. But if you want something, if you want a dollar sign, you're going to have to put a dollar sign before it, right? And obviously, that dollar sign is required. You can't just exclude that, right? You have to have that dollar sign just like that. Yep. And so then, here's just another example of a literal. Using it in multiple places within a statement, within a sentence, within a statement. And like I said, always remember you're using the backticks on those. All right, let's see where we're at on this. Alert messages. Okay, so we kind of already looked at alert messages. I will go ahead. I'm not going to spend too much time on here, but there's Unicode characters that you can actually use in your code as well, just like in JavaScript. In HTML. And this actually shows an example of using this is a little heart there. I love, they love to definitely market their brand within their book. So that's that. But yeah, just real quick, I do want to talk about alerts a little bit more. I'll talk about alerts. So basically, before, when I say back in the day, I'm dating myself, but you know, back in the day, you know, before there was console.log wasn't around. You know, I don't know exactly when it came out, but you know, earlier versions of JavaScript didn't have, you know, console.log statements. You know, it's great to be able to debug things. You start, you know, getting used to using that within the developer tools. It can be very handy for you. But you know, before there was console.log statements, what a lot of developers did was use alerts. But you know, it's actually great that that's not around anymore, because what I, you know, what can kind of happen is you have these when you're testing and you're debugging stuff. You know, you'll see. You know, I did it myself, and I know a lot of other developers did it too. They'd have alerts all over the place to print out things to, you know, just for debugging purposes. And one of the problems with alerts is once you have an alert in there, then you know, if somebody forgets to take it out, then all of a sudden it's in the code. And sometimes you can have some logic, right? Some code logic that doesn't always get hit. And, you know, you thought you'd take on all the alerts, you didn't. And all of a sudden in production, you have this alert pop up with as a debugging statement. So the console.log file really, using that console.log, that really helped with that. Okay. Also I wanted to mention kind of alert. So whenever you see so you know, basically alert is a method, right? It's a method of the window object. It belongs to the window object. This is not something that you created yourself. It's not part of the document, really. It's part of a part of the window object. And one way to actually can kind of tell is if you don't see anything prefixing this, you know, say like document. So if it was part of document, you could do that, right? But it's not part of document, right? Will this work still? No. It's not defined function. That's not part of document, right? So our documents are HTML document. It's actually part of window, right? And actually you put in window here and hit save, it'll work. So, but by default, you don't have to put in window, okay? You don't have to put in window. But it is actually a method, a function that's on the window object. Let's see, what else? All right, I think that I'm going to move on from that. And I think we'll start looking at the assignments. There's a few other areas that I kind of still want to go over, but we'll just go over as we're going through the assignment. Let me get things set up for that real quick here. Okay, so let's go and look at the JavaScript Chapter 2 homework assignment. So here, we'll just go ahead and do a code along with this real quick. Create a drive-through website of your favorite fast food chain. Use a web form, not window.prompt. I didn't show you window.prompt, but I'll show you later in a subsequent exercise how to do that. To accept the user to input for a number of burgers, fries, sodas, or whatever 3 menu items of your choice. I'm just going to go ahead and do burgers, fries, and sodas. So by looking at this, you can see you got burgers, fries, and sodas, and you got a value, right? So these are the values you're going to assign. You're going to create variables, you know, burger price, fries price, soda price, whatever, and you're going to assign them. Them look like good candidates to use a constant, right? And And then we're going to go ahead and calculate the total cost of the order on a button click. It's asking us to use an arrow function, which we really haven't covered functions, and really it's more for chapter 3 stuff, but we're going to go ahead and just cut and paste and use this one. All right. And we'll talk about it a little bit, but actually we'll be going into functions more tomorrow. And then here, I want you to output the total cost of the user's order to the same web page with form controls. Use a template literal to concatenate your variables into your string output. Add any HTML, CSS, or Bootstrap that makes the page look a little better, right? So we have burgers are $1, fries are $2, sodas are $2.50. All right. So first, let's go ahead and, so this is our JavaScript. So let's go ahead and do a const, and let's do a, we can just do a, now you can do what you want here. Like I said, I'm just kind of used to doing it this way. And it might not be the best anymore. But I kind of like to obviously make sure that you can tell that this is a constant when you're using it in your code. So were burgers $1 or $1.50? Let's take a look at that again. $1. Fries are $2, not $2.50. So we're just going to put $1, right? And then we're going to go ahead and do a const for and that's going to be what, 2. And then we'll do a const for drink price. And we're going to give that, what, $2.50, right? All right. I don't know what my deal is with this keyboard. All right. Burger price, fries price, drink price. So there's our constants, okay? And then we also need to, put some totals as well, because they might order multiple burgers, multiple fries. So then we're just going to go ahead and now so a constant, obviously we're not going to want to change those values again, right? But here we want some totals, right? So let's do we're going to use a let because this total is going to change, right? So we're going to do burgers total. And we can just assign that to a default of 0, default value. And then we can do a fries total and assign that also to a 0. And we'll do a drinks total. All right, and assign that to 0 as well. And then we also had, what else did we have here? We had that function, right? Had that function, the arrow function. So let's go grab that. Let's drop that in there. And then so here, what are we wanting to do? So what this does, let me explain to Ken what this does. This is called anonymous function. We'll get into this a lot more tomorrow. But basically it's going to do document get element by ID. It's going to go look for a button in the HTML document called button click. Okay, and it actually it's registering an event. It's registering an on-click event for this button. So when the button's clicked, it's going to execute what's in here. Okay. So let's go into our HTML and let's just go ahead and create a basic document. And in here, I'm not going to create a something to I'm going to just do a basic thing. You can do the styling. Okay, I'm just going to put some input tags, and we're going to do type text, and we're going to give it an ID of maybe we'll put a label here though. We're going to put an ID of burgers. And let's put a label though. And we're going to do a label for burgers. And then what do we want to do after that? Now I suggest you kind of use maybe like a form. Use maybe Bootstrap and use the form groups and stuff like that. Okay, I'm not going to for just this quick thing. I'm not going to do all that. All right, so we got burgers here, and then let's just go ahead and create another label for fries, and then let's do the input field text, and we want to give this an ID of fries. And then we'll do one also for all right, so we got that now. So we got a place to put our burgers, our fries. You can always add, you can do things where, you know, you can assign by default maybe. You could do one for each one of these if you want. So it's going to automatically at least have a value in there. But you don't have to. I guess somebody might not order a burger or fries. So, okay, so we got that. What else do we need? So we do need our button, right? So we need a button in here. And let's just go ahead and add a button. And our button, you know, submit order. Let's see. And our ID needs to be like whatever we call it, right? What did we say here? Get element button click. I think we just changed the name of that. Okay, so we got button, we have an ID. And then we'll just call this submit button. All right, so we got that. And let's change this to that name. So now we got that. And then here we want to, what else we want to do? We want to be able to display our results. You can use different tags here. You can use a div tag or whatever. I just want to kind of show you another tag, and this is used more for like calculation type stuff, but let me just kind of show you this one. There's this output tag. I don't think we've actually done anything with this. So I'm going to give this an ID. I'm going to call this total. And let's close that up. We don't need to put anything in there. So this is a total tag. So what we're going to actually end up doing is we're going to grab all of our, so nothing's going to display here on our screen for this. We'll take a quick look. But we'll have burgers, fries, and drinks. And then we'll have our submit button to submit the order. And then that's going to execute the JavaScript for us to do our calculations. And we're going to put the result in this output field. And so we call this by total, okay? So let's go back here. Well, let's just see this real quick. All right, so there's our fields over there. Okay, burgers, fries, and drinks. All right, so let's go back to our JavaScript here. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to create some more variables. And we're going to do a let. Maybe we call it users equals users burgers document dot get element by ID, get element by ID, and then what was our thing there? It was just called burgers, right? All lowercase. And then we'll do the same for the others as well, right? So let fries, let user fries. So we're going to do document.get element by ID. And then here we were going to do what? Call it fries, right? Lowercase, I believe. And then we want to do drinks. User drinks. Document.get element by ID. And we're going to do drinks, right? Okay. So this should get all of the values from our different fields on our form. Now, let's see what we want to do. So if we put a 1 in here, it'd be 1, 2. So what we're going to want to do, this will be a different number. Users burgers. So we're wanting to total up the cost for the burgers, right? So let's do this. Let's do our burgers total. We have a burgers total here, right? And let's do burgers total equals user burgers times burger price. Okay, let's do, so that's that one. Let's do our user fries. We'll do the same thing. which is fries total, right? Equals fries, users fries, times do drinks total. Which is going to be users drinks times drink price. Okay. So we have that. So now we want to do, we kind of want to do a grand total, right? So let's do a let grand total equals burgers total plus fries total plus drinks total. So there's our grand total now. Okay. Then what we're going to want to do here after that is go ahead and do, so there's different ways to get some data to the screen. And we'll talk about this more in the future here, but what we can kind of do though, we create that total, that output total here. So basically what we can kind of do here is we can do a document .get element by ID, right? And then we're going to want to get the total, right? And then there have this property called inner HTML. And so basically it gets that total. It helps if you spell it right. And then gets that total, the ID, and then the inner HTML. So basically the inner HTML is going to be right here, right? So we're referring to this, which is empty, but we're going to put something in there, okay? So what we can do here, and so what we're going to do is we're going to use the template literal. That's where we use that backtick, and we're going to use a backtick, and then let's just do an H1. Oh, we could be able to do it like that. Let's do an H1, and let's put in total price maybe. And then equals, and then maybe we'll just do a span tag in there. You know, you can put in whatever tags you want. And we're gonna, so here you might want to do a class or something, so you want to kind of style it a little bit, okay? You can put a class in here. But for our purposes right now, we're just going to use a span. Let's just use a span tag there, and let's put our dollar sign. We want to put a dollar sign on our total, and then we want to use that way to use the variables, right? We'll use the dollar sign, and then the open and close, and then we got grand total. So that's our grand total. And here, you know, we've got, we have drink price, you know, it's, things may need to be, depends on what your prices is and stuff like that, but you know, for monetary thing, you want two decimal places, right? So what you can do here on this is go ahead and do a dot to fixed, and then put in 2. So this will give you 2 decimal places, okay? And then from there, we're just going to go ahead and close our span tag here. And probably shouldn't use H1 here. That's probably a bad one to use. Let's just use a div tag. And let's end our div. All right. There we go. How does that look? Am I missing anything? I think it's okay. I think it's okay. Let's see if I'll save that. And what you can always do in here, you know, especially you're writing JavaScript here. Sometimes the browser will tell you there's an error or something, but sometimes it won't. So, you know, obviously you can come in here with developer tools, do an F12, see if anything comes up in the console. Nothing comes up in the console as being an error, so that's good, right? So we'll go ahead and close that out. So let's go ahead and add one burger, one fry, and one drink, and do a submit. And something didn't work there. So let's go ahead and go take a look and see what we did wrong. Submit order. Let's see, submit button. Did I call that submit button over here? ID submit button. Total. Oh, helps if you kind of bring in the code, right? So here you got to do your script tag. And then bring in the code, right? So we want to do source here. And then we just want to bring this chapter 2. Oh, we need to go to that JavaScript directory. And then we'll do that. And then, there we go. Cannot set property of null setting on click. Okay. I think I know why that's like that too. Set property of null setting on click. So what that's telling me. I bet if I change this. So this is a place here. Let me before I say anything and be wrong. let me change this. Let me defer this. There we go. So what happens is, especially when you're registering events, that's what this kind of called registering event. You're registering an on-click event. And so in JavaScript, what you really have to do is make sure like this whole file is. Another thing is you could use the script tag and put it at the end here before this body tag, but you're trying to. What's happening is you're trying to register event before all of the HTML before the document is actually there and available, right? So, okay, so let's get that fixed. All right, so let's put one burger here, one fry, one drink, hit submit. And now it says total price is not a number. That's okay though. Let's go figure that out. So in here, let's see what we did. Burgers, fries, drinks. Burgers, fries, drinks. Burgers, fries, drinks is our ID. Price total. Well, one thing we can do. So I submitted that order. Let me, here we can, let's just take a look. Users burgers is not defined. Uncaught reference error. User burgers is not defined. Maybe I need to open this in live server again. All right, that did make a difference. So I'm going to get rid of this. I'll just do that for testing purposes. Let's change this. You got to get the value of the field. All right. Of each one of these. Dot value, and dot value. And that's going to make all the difference in the world. All right. Let's refresh this. I still think I got some weird stuff going on here with the whole screen. Let me actually close these. All right, let's put in our numbers now. There we go. So total everything up 550. Wasn't thinking. It's been a while since I did a few things here. So yeah, you gotta get the value of the field, right? This is just getting the actually, by you doing document get element by ID burgers, it's returning the whole input, that whole input object, so to speak, right? You have to get the value of that input object, right? So you have to do value on each one. So this is what you need to do for this homework, that first homework assignment. You know, please spend a little time using a little bit of style sheets, Bootstrap, whatever, you know, pretty it up a little bit. Make sure you use toFixed on it. Anybody got any questions about this? Okay, so now I want to kind of look at Chapter 2's Lab Part 1 here. And on that, what you're going to use is, so you can go to VitalSource, you know, where the book is, the online book. And on the pages 86 through 87, it has actually creating this app, right? This miles per gallon calculator. And then on 91 through 92 is actually the second part. So the first part that's on page 86 through 87 is a code along with miles per gallon. And the second part is you're going to make changes to that. Okay, you're going to make changes to it after it's been completed. All right. I'm going to go ahead and show you actually how I'm making things easier for you on that. So actually what you can kind of go ahead and do, if you go to your repository, I'm going to go ahead and go to mine here. So if you go to your repository, and then inside, okay, you know, one thing I kind of want to point out, make sure you put everything under the JavaScript. We're not really using the HTML, CSS one anymore, right? We're using this JavaScript directory. So make sure you go use JavaScript, and then there's the homework, the lab, etc., right? Also, there's this text box student download. And if you go in here and go to, is it going to be exercises? I believe exercises. Nope, it's not going to be exercises. It's going to be book apps, chapter 2. And if you go in here, what I'll go ahead and do here, I think I'm just going to pull this up in Visual Studio Code. So in here, Miles, okay, let's take a look at this. So this is basically that app. So it doesn't really have much in here, right? It's just got the title and the script. Just want to make sure this is the right one though, right? So miles per gallon calculator. Maybe it's not. It's miles per kilogram. Kilometers. And then test scores. So you're going to probably do it a little differently. But just in general, it has this. And let's just look at this. Yeah, so this is miles per kilogram. Yeah. So this is just similar. I'm wrong about that. This is miles per gallon, right? This miles per gallon. And the other, this one here that I'm pulling up is miles to kilometers. But, you know, you can use this also as well. As kind of something to help you along with this. It's pretty close, right? And you know, you got some styling and stuff as well. So let's take a look at this real quick. So here you're telling you to put in a number of miles, and then you hit OK, and it's putting the value miles to kilometers in there like that, right? But what you're going to want to do is a little different than that. Code along on that. Convert Fahrenheit, that's okay. Yeah, let's go look at that. So here, you know, through Vital Source, you can bring up the book. And then here's basically the miles per gallon application. And you can just always go down here, go to page. I'm down here at the right-hand corner of the screen, right? You can put the page number. So that's that. 2 prompts of the miles per gallon application. Enter miles, enter gallons. The results displayed in the browser. So obviously here, you know, all you can do is follow along. This ain't going to be very difficult for you. And actually, you just can kind of come in here. So I thought this was the same app that was actually available within your source, within your, that download within your repository already, that kind of examples. But here you can actually grab this, you know, to make things easier here since you're learning. You can grab this and always copy it, right? And you can grab those. So you want to start on that page 86. You can grab this, get everything set up, go through this. That's the test scores part 1. But then on 91, it's going to tell you it's kind of the second part of this, right? So test and modify the miles per gallon application, right? So start on that page 86. You can download that, get that to work, and then make sure you complete this. Because if you don't, if you only do the one from the code along in the book, then you're only going to get 50% of the thing. You need to make sure that you do the second part of each one, because that's going to be 50% of your grade on each one of these, right? It's not just doing the code along, it's making the changes to that, right? One's on page, 91, and the next one's 92. So make sure you do both parts of that. And then after you do that one here, after you do, once you do both of these, should make things a lot easier for you to, this one you're going to just kind of do on your own, right? But it's going to be very similar to what you already did, right? You're just going to have a different kind of equation here for that. So, and then make sure you use parse float and toFixed on that. Let's see what else. Look at that again here. Now, you just follow this, pretty simple here. Okay, gives you all the. You're just putting everything in one file, so this shouldn't be too bad at all. Just make sure, like I said, make sure you do the second part of it, right? Which is the updates to each one of those, and then do your convert Fahrenheit to Celsius. Let me know if you have any problems with that. I can help you if you have any problems with that. Let's see, what else now? So that was lab 1. And this is lab 2. So let's go ahead and go to this. So this is Free Code Camp, good resource. And this is the JavaScript algorithm and data structures. Now this does say legacy here. There's actually a newer one. And actually I was looking at this end of last week, and I was thinking about using the more updated one. It's a little more recent as far as, but a lot of the concepts really didn't follow where we're at with our different chapters and our homework. So I started to change it, and then I went back and said maybe we'll just go ahead and stick with this one. So this is the legacy one. So some situations here where it's going to tell you to use a variable, a var, and stuff like that, which you really shouldn't be doing anymore. But go ahead and go to Free Code Camp. Sign up, because the only way you can track your progress. You're going to walk through some different screens, okay? And the only way to track your progress is by signing in. So sign in, and you're going to do this basic JavaScript, okay? And you're going to do about 20%. So click on this first one. You come in here. It's going to tell you what to do, right? This is a multi-line comment. Run the test. It's going to say because I already had it in there from before. But basically, you're gonna run the test, and then you're gonna go to the next one. Okay. So we'll tell JavaScript to do that, creates that, use our thing, look at our name. So let me know if you have any problems with this. It's pretty straightforward. And it'll tell you if it doesn't pass. The reason I'm not signed in, because I kind of already completed it, but it's still holding on to stuff I've already done, right? So if you have a check mark, if you change the name of this or something else, I'm going to do that and then run the test. It's going to fail. It's going to have an X there. You just have to follow the directions here, right? You have to follow the directions and then run the test. If you get a check mark, you're good to go. And then if you're logged in, you can just go to the next one, all right? It'll allow you to go to the next one. So I didn't complete this one, right? And you assign a value of 7 to the variable, right? So here I'm going to change this to a 7. Now if I run the test, it's going to, you should not change the code above, specified comment, okay. It would help if I read the directions, right? So like I said, this is using a vars, which is kind of outdated a little bit. So it's best to use let and const. And then if I run the test now, it should be good. So yeah, it's good now. So if you're logged in, you'll just be able to go to the next one, and do 20% of that. Let me know if you have any problems with that. And when you get done with that, you want to go ahead and make a screenshot. Go ahead and make a screenshot of that and then put it in your labs directory. And like I said, please make sure that you don't use your HTML CSS folder anymore for everything else. Well, for the JavaScript stuff, make sure that you use the JavaScript folder. So you got homework, labs, etc. in here as well. Hands-on test. Okay. Any questions?